Hello, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Death. I'm Fran Solomon.
And I'm Andy McNeil.
And we're thrilled to be your host for these conversations. Let's Talk Death is brought to you by Heal Grief, a social support network creating community after someone has died. Everything we do is inspired by our core belief that no one should ever grieve alone.
Our goal for this program is to have a friendly chat with some amazing people so we can help normalize and educate our Heal Grief community. Our guest today is USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author, Alexa Bigwarfe. Alexa is a wife, mother, proud veteran, a best-selling author, author coach, publisher, and podcaster. Her writing career began after her infant daughter passed away at 2 days old. She turned to writing for healing, which led her to self-publishing. And Alexa now guides other authors through the publishing and marketing process in her company, Write, Publish, Sell, and through publishing houses Kate Biggie Press, Purple Butterfly Press, and Chrysalis Press. She is also the founder and host of the Women in Publishing Summit. She founded a nonprofit, Sunshine After the Storm, after the loss of her infant daughter, to support grieving mothers. A spirited activist, Alexa enjoys bringing light to topics surrounding marginalized voices, particularly as they pertain to women and children. She lives in Columbia, South Carolina with her husband, 3 living children, destined to be activists too, and her dog.
Alexa, welcome to Let's Talk Death, and we're honored to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I just want to say this is such a great forum. I think that one of the things that I've learned in the last 8 years is how terrified people are to talk about death in general and how awkward that makes us and how many problems stem from that. So I'm really glad that you have this resource available.
Thank you so much. And I was wondering if you could share in more detail your experience of loss, how it inspired you to write for healing, and the impact this has had in your life. And I just want to acknowledge with you that today would have been your daughter's 8th birthday. And so we want to especially thank you for celebrating her life with us.
Thank you. So our girls were, it was my 3rd pregnancy, and I was very, very surprised to find out that we had a bonus baby, that there were 2 heartbeats in there. And we kind of, by the time we adjusted to the fact that we had identical twins, we were hit with the hard news that they were suffering from a syndrome called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. And this is a pretty deadly syndrome that affects between 20 to 25% of identical twin pregnancies, and if not treated, is 100% fatal. And the treatments are kind of trial and error sometimes. I mean, they've come up with some good things, amnio reductions, laser surgery that works sometimes doesn't. But anyway, we were originally told that they would both probably were unlikely to make it. So at the 20-week mark, we thought we were losing both babies at that point in time. And the next 10 weeks were a whirlwind of bed rest and hospital visits and procedures to basically with TTTS, the one baby produces too much fluid and the other baby is not getting enough. So we had one that was basically being completely overwhelmed by too much fluid, which caused her heart to stop functioning properly, caused a lot of buildup of fluid in her body. And then the other baby, our surviving baby, actually was severely growth restricted and not getting enough fluid to develop properly. So I spent 5 weeks on bed rest in the hospital. My other 2 children were just 4 and not even 2 yet. And they used to refer to the hospital as mommy's house. So, you spend a lot of time in the hospital when it becomes mommy's house. And our girls surprisingly were born. They were due February 13th. And I went into labor December 10th, the day after my 35th birthday. So it was a pretty scary day. And they were both born alive, which was just the biggest relief to both of us, to my husband and I, because nobody really knew at that point in time what was going to happen. But Catherine was in critical condition. They were both rushed up to the NICU, and we spent 2 days there, and then they There was just nothing else that they could do. They couldn't. She was in such bad shape from her lungs not being able to develop because of all the ascites or fluid in her abdomen that had built up, and her heart just couldn't function. And it was a difficult day. And then we had another one who was still fighting for her life, and she was a 1 pound, 10 ouncer, but just the benefit of them being in the womb until 30 weeks, 5 days was that even though she was the size of a 24, 25 weeker, she had lung development of a 30 weeker, and some other good things that had happened. So she's quite the child. Very, very, very feisty little girl. And we just remind ourselves every time she is, showing her full force of personality, that if it weren't for that full force, she probably would not be here with us. So, but she spent 12 weeks in the NICU, and we were finally able to bring her home. She had to have a G-tube placed. So she had her first year of life was pretty medically challenging, but she's perfectly healthy now. She's outgrown all issues. The hole in her heart closed. She passes everything with flying colors. She's itty bitty. She only ranks about 6% on the growth chart, but she's still climbing her little bitty curve. So
right, she's on her own curve.
That's right. That's right.
Good,
Yeah.
She's
so you
the
had
miracle.
asked. She is totally
She's the miracle.
Yes. So you had asked how that impacted me, which I was just absolutely blown away by the overwhelming. There was so much going on in our lives. We had two small children at home. We were driving back and forth every day because I wanted to spend as much time as possible in the NICU with her. I didn't even have the opportunity really to process the death of my other daughter until probably about 6 to 8 months out, when we knew Karis was going to be okay. And then it kind of like hit me. And in the meantime, I was really angry. I was angry at the way people responded, at the things I thought people should have done and didn't do. I was angry at the stupid things people said. Please don't ever tell anyone, at least you got to bring one home when one of their babies dies. It's just, we are so grateful for Karis, but it is not the same. So, I was angry. So I started blogging. And as I started blogging, I found that the people I was really helping a lot were the people who needed to know what to do. So it was constantly people coming to what do I say to someone who's just lost a baby? What do I do? What gifts do I give them? All of those kinds of things. So I started shifting towards that. But when my girlfriend she delivered a 37-week-old baby stillborn when my Karis was about 18 months old. And that's when the idea of Sunshine After the Storm, a survival guide for the grieving mother, it'd been percolating. I'd been writing some of those things on my blog. I'd been thinking, I wish there was a better resource, because I hadn't really found a good resource for me. You get all these pamphlets and the official, like, what to do when your baby dies, and it's just cold. So we put together this book of over 30 mothers and fathers. There's a section for fathers about their experiences, all very different experiences, but to encourage and provide hope and light, basically, in that terrible moment. And everything else has just kind of flowed from that. I wanted to give the book to people. I didn't want to sell it, even though it is available on Amazon. And when you purchase it, the money goes back into the nonprofit. But we donate copies to the hospital on December 12th, on Catherine Day, as we call it. We take a trip to the hospital and we'll donate copies of the book and other care packages. But I started sending out the book to people, and then I started adding other little trinkets and things in there, self-care items. And before I knew it, I was sending full-blown care packages. And I was like, I can't pay for this by my own anymore. So I started the nonprofit so I could start fundraising. And it's kind of, spiraled from that point. So tonight, actually, we're having a big care package party and the annual kind of like supplying fundraiser to get all the supplies that we need for the care packages and to get those ready and get stuff ready to take to the hospitals.
That's amazing.
That was a really long answer. I hope I covered everything there.
No, that was great. I do want to ask you a question, though. We just touched slightly on your grief and how it really didn't even manifest for months because you were just so in the trenches. But Can you shed light for a moment on perhaps how it was like for your children, for your older children,
Yeah.
expecting to have two sisters come home?
Well, my 4-year-old, the 2-year-old didn't really understand. She thought it was a little bit weird that we had on the 21st, her birthday, she turned 2 on December 22nd that year. So it was a talk about odd days. The December 21st of 2011, we had a funeral in the morning and a birthday party that night for our 2-year-old because all the family was in town. So you want to talk about a crazy melange of emotions. But she didn't really understand. She asks about Catherine a lot. Throughout the years, we've noticed that if she really wants to get our attention, she'll start crying and say that she really misses Catherine. And that gets us every time. Children know how to work the system.
They train us well.
Yes. My 4-year-old was a different story, though. He was really angry at us. He said, when we came home and we explained what had happened, he was like, "You promised me 2 baby sisters." And, he didn't really know how to understand that. And over the next few months and years, we talked a lot. And I'll be very honest, it was really, really hard because I had lost my faith. It was really hard to tell them that she'd gone to a beautiful place when they explained where she was, that she was in heaven. And I was thinking, is there even a heaven? I don't know what just happened to her. She's not here. And, but I wanted to comfort them any way that I could. So I told them a lot of stories about what we all hope and have faith exists, or some people have hope and faith exists, I suppose. But it was challenging. So I didn't want to one of the things I've learned about children is how literally they take everything. So I didn't want to be telling them things like I've heard other people say when they explain to their children that a baby's born sleeping, or that the baby's gone to sleep, or the baby's resting. Like, that's very confusing. So confusing to them. They want to know when the baby's going to wake up and why are they in a box, and all of
and
those
sometimes it leads
things.
to actual anxiety and insomnia,
yes,
because
exactly.
a child thinks that, oh my
If
God,
they
if they go to sleep,
yes,
they're not going to wake up.
Yeah, so we learned a lot of things, but I also was just blown away by the honesty of children, and how really it wasn't scary. There was nothing about it that was scary. They were sad, of course, because they didn't get to have their sister, but it was more just a really big curiosity. And as odd as it sounds, I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to have those open and frank conversations with them.
Yeah.
And we've grown up we've raised our other daughter very openly about the fact that she is a twin and has a twin sister, and talks about Catherine all the time. And today she blew out her candle and she said, "Can I tell you my wish?" And I said, "Well, you're not supposed to, but you can tell me your wish." And she said, "I wish Catherine would come play with me." And part of the time I wonder, am I damaging her by making Catherine so much part of her life? But I think that it goes all ways, doesn't it? I've heard of other people who learned that they had a twin who died at birth when they were in their 30s, and then they were messed up the rest of their life because all of a sudden they were like, "Now I understand."
One of the things, Alexa, over the years I've worked with, I can't even count how many families now. Spent time with them in counseling settings and support group settings, whatever it may be. And one of the things that we discovered just by doing that is the truth can be hard to deal with, but it's still the truth. And being able to have those open and honest conversations becomes important. Another thing that we've realized is when we don't open that line of communication, typically the child they're doing it in their own mind. They learn that it's a taboo not to talk about it. And so then they struggle silently. So if we had to make a choice, do we want our child to struggle silently, or would we rather them go through their struggles and questions and things with us?
Yeah. the
better option is probably with us. One of the other things that you were mentioning, though, that I wanted to just kind of double back on is hearing you talk about even the day where you had a funeral and then you celebrated a birthday, and both in one day, and just how conflictual that seems in our mind, and how that day must have gone. And one of the things we talk about on this show all the time is how conversations of death are also conversations of life.
Mm-hmm.
And this relationship that death and life have, you know, where you can't talk about one without necessarily talking about the other.
Right.
Because they're both like these realities that exist together. And in some ways, they're both part of the same journey in some way. So I think, to me, that day and you having to experience that, and now thinking about what you've brought out of just the struggle that you've had. There's another concept called post-traumatic growth, where it's the idea that even through our struggles, there's still growth. Not that we would want our struggles so that we can have the growth, but because we've had them, there's this growth that happens too. So,
yeah,
and I see it like
no, I
just how that's affected you.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I appreciate the fact. I know there's a lot of people who have straight up told me that they think that I'm weird for how much I talk about death with my children, but it's okay because I'm raising children who will not be as weird and awkward as people who awkwardly said things like, well, just get a dog or something random and I know I've grown as a person. I understand. And you know what? My best friend's father just passed away a couple days ago. And I still found, even though I just lost my dad last year and I know the grief of now losing a child and a parent, I still was just like, there are no words. There are no good words. So I understand why someone would in that moment of feeling like they need to say something really, really stupid, which is really part of why I have spent so much time talking about it, because people need to know that it is okay to talk about it. It was far more hurtful to me, the people who never said anything at all, far more hurtful. So I would much rather somebody say something and it be something silly or something that, I mean, now I joke around with people and I'm like, did you just hear what just came out of your mouth? Did you let me say it back to you slowly? And I got that from a friend who said, she said that to one of her friends. I was like, that's such a great idea. I'm totally going to do that too.
I like that. I think I'm going to do that too. I like
it's
it.
a great
idea. You know, because
but we have to have the conversations.
People are often very well intended. Yes. But because we don't talk about death and grief as a society, it truly is awkward.
Yes, it is.
I had someone ask me one time. They said, I'm going to my sister-in-law's, to the funeral of her, her mother. What's some good things I could say? And I said, well, let me ask you, do you get along with your sister-in-law? And she said, oh yeah, I love her. I guess that was the first question, right? So she said, I absolutely love her. And I said, well, that would be a pretty good thing to say when you see her. I love you.
Yes.
And give her a hug.
That's a great clarification, because if they hated each other, you would not want to advise that the first thing out of her mouth be, I love you so much. And the other thing, I recently published a book for another author called What Do I Do? And it's basically the guidebook for friends and family, coworkers, whomever, how to help the family who's just lost a child. And one of the things that she repeated through the book a couple times is how little saying you're in my thoughts and prayers does for people. I mean, to me, to you, that may seem like a great comfort, especially for the really religious people who, to them, prayer is one of the best gifts you can. But when you're in the throes of it and you need your house cleaned, or your child's suit that they're going to wear in their coffin picked up from the dry cleaner, or the mail picked up from the post office, or the phone answered because it's ringing and ringing. Thoughts and prayers are great, but take action. Take action and help.
Do something.
Right.
So I want to touch on something. So your writing actually turned into healing. But what I think I heard is that your writing was actually inspired by your anger. So how did that transform? If you could share, how did that craft transform for you? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I had a lot of things happening at the beginning. Of course, I was really devastated. I was sad, but I was angry. I was angry at my doctors because I think there were a lot of things that could have been done. So I took that anger and I transformed it into advocacy. I started telling everybody in the world about twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome and talking about it, because so many OBs, despite the fact that it's such a high risk that an identical twin pregnancy will develop this. So many OBs are still clueless about it. So I turned my anger to advocacy basically on that front. I talked about what life was like in the NICU. And one of the things that I'm trying to do with my nonprofit now is really talk about things like paid time off and bereavement leave, but paid time off when you have a medically fragile child as well.
Yeah.
It was devastating to me to see these women make the choice to have to go back to work the day or a day after the day after or 2 days after they delivered their baby, because they were calculating in their mind, okay, this baby's going to be in the NICU for 6 to 8 to 12 weeks. I don't have that time off of work. I need to go back to work. But in reality, studies show how much those babies heal and do so much better when they are in kangaroo care and surrounded by their mom. And so, really, the anger isn't just about the death and the way people behaved after the death, but I do talk about that a lot. And so, again, there turned into advocacy, trying to help others from having the feelings and the emotions that I felt when people said or did or didn't say or do certain things. But I've really funneled a lot of it into, this is a problem. We have these areas that are problematic in our society. No one should have to return to work 4 days after their 28-year-old son has killed himself, or their husband has died,
Right.
or their other child or family or aunt or father or whomever. Like, our system is so ridiculous. And, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars are lost in our economy each year because of our inability to handle death and loss. So it's a big problem.
Right. People may be going back to work, but you're not mentally, emotionally,
productive.
all that.
You're not productive.
Yeah, you're not there to be exactly. Right.
You're there in physical presence, but you're certainly not there in emotional or productive presence.
I can't even imagine. I was blessed because it was interesting. I had been working full time in counterterrorism nonetheless. And when my youngest were in March of that year, my husband and I decided I was going to come home and be with the kids. I was traveling a lot. I was exhausted. I was paranoid surprisingly from working in counterterrorism.
Right.
And I wanted to see what life on the other side was like, because surely being a stay-at-home mom would be easier than working full-time, right? But
told you.
Right. And it was only, I'd been home. I think I worked all the way to the end of March. I was home April, and I found out in May that I was pregnant with the twins. So it was like boom, 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 transition. But the point is, like, I have no idea. I was blessed that I was at home, so I could be on bed rest. I could be in the hospital without worried about, and I didn't have to, the stress of going back to work was not there when it came to all the things that we had to do with Karis and her treatments and her, a year of therapies of various sorts and doctor's appointments and all these things that, we don't get it in this country, like how important it is to have those protections in place. And I'm just so thankful I didn't have to worry about losing my job or returning to a job when I could not. I can't even imagine how I could have gone back to do the kind of job that I was doing with the level of mental, I don't know, maybe I would have thrown myself into it the way I threw myself into all these other things to distract me after the death. But yeah, it's crazy.
It's really, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, I will say that I'm glad it worked out the way it did work out. You were able to throw that energy into practical solutions and help. And it sounds like even the way that you wrote your book is it's more about, compiling the experience of people and helping to normalize that for other people coming along, So I will say, I'm glad that it did work out where you could funnel it in that direction, because certainly just hearing you talk about it is inspirational, even though that doesn't fully capture it, that you're taking the time to advocate on these things.
Thank you. It is. And, the writing did help me heal, being able to pour out these emotions, being able to say these things, whether you ever publish them for people to read or not, putting things on paper. I encourage you, if you're having a difficult time and you don't want to publicly share, to get out a journal and just start writing. And gratitude journaling, it's amazing how helpful that can be. I'm sure that's a topic you've talked about before. But it's interesting because I learned, this is just a really cheesy thing that you can cut out of the interview if you want to later, but I learned about, I don't know, a decade or two ago that my name, Alexa, actually means helper of mankind. And when I learned that, I was like, my whole life makes so much more sense to me, because it's like somehow that was bestowed on me when I received this name was like, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? But sometimes it's a little bit, it's also a big burden to carry too, because it's like, I need to take care of myself from time to time as well. But I know why Amazon named Alexa the Alexa, because it's a helper. It's the greatest helper.
Right. I don't think that's cheesy at all.
I'm leaving it in.
Yeah,
awesome.
We're leaving it in.
And also, it's to a point that sometimes, out of tragedy, we really do find a new meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like your tragedy did find a very purposeful path for you.
Yeah. I mean, any given day, I would much rather be chasing around two little girls with as much energy as this one has. But I guess if I had to take my circumstances and do something with it, I've chosen a very rewarding path. Difficult, but rewarding in its own way.
I think that's a fantastic way to put it. I mean, it's really at that point, there are certainly some people who might say, well, these things happened for a reason. And I don't know about all that personally. Right. I mean, people have their own beliefs about it, and I support what those are. The fact is, though, that something did happen. And because it happened, here I am sitting on this precipice of, like, what do I do now? What do I do with myself? And there are options. Very difficult. I'm not saying they're easy. Very difficult, but there are options. And the path we choose does impact how our life, how our life turns out in a lot of ways.
Agreed, 100%. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned on my journey, is that it's really a choice. Healing is a choice. I could be sad every single day and never get past that. Wasn't the way I wanted to live, and I don't think it would honor my daughter by falling apart like that. So I made a choice, and it's not an easy choice. Don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody who's listening and grieving to think, I'm just going to choose tomorrow, I'm going to wake up and be happy. That it doesn't quite work like that.
It's a process.
It is a process.
Yeah. Well, Alexa, we only have a few minutes left, so we did want to give you a chance to kind of have the last word. And a lot of our listeners once they hear your story and hear you talking, they want to know more about how they can connect with you and your work. And, how might they make that connection with you?
Well, we are always looking for support with Sunshine After the Storm. I really hate asking for money. So Sunshine After the Storm is on Instagram. We're on Facebook. If you look up Sunshine After the Storm, you'll find us there. The website currently is sunshineafterstorm.us. And if anybody ever wants to practice their writing to heal, I encourage people to submit their stories. It has been focused mostly towards the grieving mother, but I am actually kind of expanding out to grievers. Our primary focus will always be on the grieving mother, but I have a lot of work that I want to do that I think will help anyone who's grieving as well along the way. But so we look for, we're on Amazon Smile and we have a wish list, and we have a donation there, all those places. If this is something that you feel called to help with, I want to say, one of the reasons that I started doing the care packages was because in the days, weeks, months after Catherine passed away, I received 3 care packages from strangers. Just people who had heard about me, had heard that I'd lost a baby. One of them came from the TTTS support group. And the love that I felt from those packages from strangers who did not know me, but knew my pain or had, gone through something similar, it left a long-lasting impression on me. And that's the purpose behind these packages, is that in that such sad, dark moment, to bring just something that says somebody loves you and wants you to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And it's an action that demonstrates that. to people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Alexa, can people actually go to your website and perhaps donate for you to send a package out to someone
Yes.
specific?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. We have on the website, we have a place where you can make donations. We also have a place where you can request a free care package. And it can be requested by the mother, or it can be requested by someone on behalf of the mother.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And at this point in time, they are 100% free of charge. As long as we receive donations, we will continue to send packages.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Alexa, we want to thank you so much for being our guest here on Let's Talk Death and for sharing your journey and your story behind your books.
Thank you so much. This has been a really lovely conversation. And again, thank you for what you're doing with this. It's so necessary.
Well, thank you, Alexa. We appreciate you and appreciate what you do. And for those of you joining us, we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk Death. If you would like to learn more about Heal Grief, please visit us at healgrief.org. At healgrief.org, you can learn more about all the programs and resources of Heal Grief, including our national network of support of grieving young adults called Actively Moving Forward.
Make sure to sign up on healgrief.org to receive our newsletters for links in future episodes of Let's Talk Death.
And with that, we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Let's Talk Death.